But first, we begin with an incredible week in politics. What happened in Vegas obviously didn't stay in Vegas. Hillary Clinton emerging as the apparent winner of the first Democratic debate. That's what our own NBC News online survey shows. And a Boston Globe poll released yesterday has Clinton in a dead heat with Bernie Sanders in New Hampshire, right there on the doorstep of Vermont. There are also brand new fundraising reports for the third quarter of the year. Hillary Clinton raking in nearly $30 million. Ben Carson totaling $21 million, leading the money race in their parties. And this big week in politics isn't over yet, because we're anticipating a decision from Joe Biden any day now, after months of speculation about a possible run. The vice president reportedly called his organizers in early voting states this week, but he is still deflecting questions on that subject.
Are you running for president? Have you made your decision yet?
Can't hear you.
Have you made your decision yet? Do Democrats deserve your decision, Mr. Vice President?
Hey, what? Good to see you all.
For the latest on all that, we have NBC White House correspondent Kristen Welker, who wouldn't take an deflection or Korean answer, live from the White House. Kristen.
Hey, Richard. Well, he wouldn't answer my questions on that day, but we could get an answer within the next 48 hours. Sources close to the vice president tell me he's under intense pressure to say whether he's in or out. And those same sources also say his family's on board with a run. And as you pointed out, he's now calling supporters in early voting states to gauge whether he actually has a path to victory. On Friday, Biden's close ally, former Delaware Senator Ted Kaufman, sent a letter to former Biden staffers, which reads in part, quote, "If he decides to run, we will need each and every one of you yesterday." Now, a lot of people were reading a lot into that letter, but the reality, Richard, is that it was designed to send a signal that Biden wants space to decide and that the door hasn't closed yet. But Hillary Clinton's top supporters watching all of this are applying pressure. They're arguing it's just too late. As you have been mapping out, Clinton showing new signs of strength this week after that dominant debate performance. One poll showing her inching up in New Hampshire. And our latest Survey Monkey NBC News poll shows her with a commanding lead nationally. Now, President Obama, Hillary Clinton were both asked about this on Friday. They weighed in and essentially said that Biden should have space to decide. But privately here at the White House, I can tell you, Richard, that they believe it's really time for him to make a decision. Some of the reasons that he's struggling with this so much: he's always wanted to be president. He knows this would be his last shot. Plus, you'll recall his late son, Beau, urged him to run before passing away. But those who know him say the determining factor right now is whether he thinks he can win. Richard.
Kristen, thank you for that and for shouting out the questions. Keep doing that, please.
Thank you.
Also joining us right now is our panel, NBC BLK contributor and Hiram College political science professor Jason Johnson, Washington bureau chief for the Chicago Sun-Times, Lynn Sweet, and Republican pollster Kelly Ann Conway. Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
Hi.
Okay, Joe Biden, he's had more than enough time to make his decision. Lynn, is there still a window for him to get in at this point, and when does it close?
I think the real close is October 29th, when Georgia has the first filing deadline. He missed the Democratic debate. Okay, that isn't real in terms of getting on a ballot. Many states now are forming their delegates, which is, after all, how you get nominated. There's a march on for superdelegates, so I think we'll give him until the 29th, because you don't want to start running in 49 states when there are 50 of them.
Right. Jason, is the dynamic too late for him, no matter what his decision? I mean, as the train left the station, we saw this compelling debate. There's more than enough firepower on the stage. I'm not talking about some of the lesser candidates, but the debate between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton was robust.
Right.
What's his room here in the Democratic Party?
I mean, I think there's always been room for him ideologically. I think Joe Biden can come in and find a space between Bernie Sanders. He would make a similar argument to Hillary Clinton. Look, I'm not a socialist, but he's not quite as hawkish as Hillary Clinton. He certainly comes off as much more agreeable, much more empathetic. So there's space for him policy-wise. I just don't think he wants to do it. I don't think he's interested in running for president at this point. I think he's still in mourning, which is perfectly reasonable. And I think when he missed that first debate, when he didn't surprise guys, you know, pop in on a parachute and say, hey, I'm here. I think that was sort of a clear sign this is not something he's going to do.
You've run campaigns. What does it do in terms of the staffing that you would need to get together?
Right.
I mean, he may have time in terms of the dates, but you've got to recruit people, you've got to fire people up. Surely the best people are already taken.
I mean, look, there's never too many people taken. There's always somebody else in D.C. who will come work for you. But at this point, he'd have to start poaching people from Hillary. He'd probably have to start poaching people on the ground from Bernie Sanders. And that is actually harder than just recruiting, because he's going to have to put together a team of people who might already be committed. And that is a bigger problem.
Kellyanne, the numbers that we saw this week, we had two good sets of numbers here. The polling numbers straight out of the debate, but also some fundraising numbers. I wonder if we can pull some of these up here, because there's some interesting here numbers on the Republican side and on the Democratic side. Here's the Democratic numbers. Hillary Clinton raising $29 million, almost $30 million. Bernie Sanders, it's a huge haul.
Oh, goodness.
And when you look at the number of dollars on hand, Hillary obviously has a large spend here, but this shows that the anti-establishment, these insurgent candidates have staying power, right?
Well, they do, and they do because small donors are actually feeling very bold this time. They're putting their money where their hearts are. And that's also true on the Republican side. You see the small donors supporting Carson, Cruz. Even Trump was able, who said, I'm not going to raise money, has been raising money because people say, wow, I'll buy a hat and I'll give you a $50 contribution. So even though we're in the era of the super PACs and big money politics, it's very fascinating, Richard, how powerful the small donors are collectively. It's these folks showing up 20,000 strong to a Bernie Sanders rally, going home and pointing and clicking $50, $100.
So let's just bring up those Republican numbers again, which we just showed, because the number that leaps out to me is Ted Cruz's numbers here. I mean, Carson, yes, he's out there with $20 million. Cruz is raising a huge amount of money, almost as much money there as Jeb Bush. But look at the amount of money Ted Cruz has got on hand, because he is hoarding that cash. Again, staying power for people who might not be, you know, considered by the pundits to be the leading candidates, but there's real resources there that could carry Ted Cruz through.
Well, there's no question. Plus, he right now, Ted Cruz is being seen as the outsider with insider experience and seasoning. It's one thing to be an outsider. I mean, he's the original anti-establishing, anti-Washington guy. For the same reason that Washington loathes him is why the grassroots love him. But you need money for staying power. The figures you showed are hard money. I just want to make that clear, because in addition to that, some will have super PACs and some won't. Rick Perry and Scott Walker were pushed out of the race because of a lack of hard money. The figures you just showed. They left millions of dollars in their super PAC, Richard, but you can't use the super PAC funds to do simple things like pay your staff, your official campaign staff, fly around, get to events, get back to the state capitol for each of them, as it were. So the Cruz burn rate, as reported this week, is only 51%. Jeb Bush's burn rate and Hillary Clinton's burn rate over 80%.
Yes.
Actually, when you showed that chart with the number, Bernie Sanders' spending was almost half of what Hillary Clinton's was.
Which is what his supporters probably appreciate and expect, right, Lynn? You know,
because
they expect him to be frugal.
Because one big thing, when you get small donors, you're not spending a lot of money on fundraising.
I want to go back to Kristen Welker at the White House talking about Joe Biden, because Kristen, the NBC News Survey Monkey poll here showed Joe Biden at 10%. 21 points behind Bernie Sanders, 35 points behind Hillary Clinton. If any of the Biden folks in the White House are talking to you about this, is there any concern that this is a lot of ground to make up here?
The tone among Biden supporters has shifted a bit, Richard. There's an acknowledgement that the window is closing, that the path has gotten a lot tougher this week because of Secretary Clinton's debate performance, because of the poll numbers, and because of the fundraising that you all are talking about. So there's no doubt about that. But those who remain hopeful that he will ultimately decide to get in say, look, for Vice President Biden, this is a decision that is about what's in his heart and in his head, and that it's a very personal one that he's going to sit down and make with his family, and that ultimately he's not focused on these numbers that we are so focused on. But it's hard to imagine that he's not looking at the reality of the situation as well, and acknowledging that the uphill battle that he was already facing just got a lot steeper.
Allow me,
I just want to to say thank you to Kristen at the White House for that. That's great.
Thanks, Richard.
Kellyanne, you know, can Joe Biden be an outsider running at a, you know, when people love outsiders when he's running from the White House?
No, because he's the Vice President of the United States. But I think for that same reason, Richard, I would not dismiss his chances so readily. Even Donald Trump's theory of the case a year ago was, well, I'm down in the polls, Republicans are a majority negative toward me because I'm not yet a candidate. When you become a candidate, then they make the decision. That's obviously paid off for him, his theory of the case. This man is the Vice President of the United States. That is no small day job.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Joe Biden, to get back to something Jason said that I completely agree with, ideologically, Joe Biden's got a big space to fill because it's unclear to me who in the Democratic field is currently running for the third term of Obama. Biden, I assume Biden would run for the third term of Obama-Biden.
Okay.
He's got more foreign policy experience than anyone on the Democratic side, and I wouldn't let one debate performance dissuade me. The other metrics are very monumental, but he is the Vice President, and he seems to at least have, if not the official endorsement, the backing of the President.
Okay,
Why not?
we're going to come back to this. Stay with us, okay? It's still ahead. It's the most hotly contested race in the Republican Party right now. Not the race for the president, the race for Speaker of the House. Why are they having such a hard time filling the third most powerful job in the country? But first, Hillary Clinton heads back to Congress with a top aide already in the hot seat. Stay with us.